For generations, Central Asian armies followed a predictable pattern in the Indian subcontinent. Raiders like Mahmud of Ghazni would ride in, seize as much wealth as their horses could carry, and immediately retreat across the mountains. But in the late 12th century, a new force arrived. This commander wasn't looking for a quick payday. He was looking to stay. Muhammad Ghori was facing a crisis of space. To his west and north, the Khwarezmian Empire was expanding rapidly, locking off his borders and sealing his territory within Central Asia. The only open path for expansion lay to the east. Moving east meant entering a geographically hostile land, guarded by the deeply entrenched Rajput kingdoms, warriors who viewed their territory as sacred and their martial traditions as unbreakable. The establishment of the Delhi Sultanate began as a strategic necessity. Expanding into India became Ghori's only viable path for survival. In 1178, Ghori made his opening move. He launched a direct, aggressive strike, marching his army straight through the punishing Rajasthan desert to reach the wealth of Gujarat. Queen Mother Nayika Devi met him at the Battle of Kayadara. Rather than fighting in the open, she drew Ghori's forces into the jagged, narrow passes of the Aravalli Range, using the terrain to split and trap the invading columns. The Ghori'd army was already failing from extreme heat and dehydration. At Mount Abu, they were systematically dismantled, forcing a humiliating retreat. The defeat forced Ghori to abandon the southern route. He had attempted to conquer the subcontinent through its most inhospitable deserts and found his army broken. He shifted his focus to the north. Over the next several years, Ghori bypassed the deserts entirely and began a slow, methodical advance through the fertile plains of Punjab, securing Lahore and Peshawar as stable supply bases. The strategy became one of attrition. By capturing the strategic fort at Bathinda, Ghori placed a permanent threat on the border of Prithviraj Chauhan's kingdom. Prithviraj commanded a formidable military, but he stood alone. Long-standing regional rivalries meant that neighboring kings like Jaichand and Bhimdev II remained on the sidelines, refusing to join a collective defense. By focusing on these border strongholds rather than striking at the heart of the kingdom, Ghori turned the political divisions of the Rajput states into his primary tactical advantage. This friction led to the First Battle of Tarain in 1191. In a traditional face-to-face clash, the Rajput cavalry decimated the Ghorid lines. Ghori was nearly killed on the field, and his army was routed, marking his second total failure in the Indian interior. He spent the following year rebuilding his cavalry and reconsidering his tactics. When he returned in 1192 for the Second Battle of Tarain, he replaced the concept of a fair fight with a psychological trap. Ghori opened negotiations for a fake truce. Believing the conflict was paused, the Rajput camp spent the night in celebration, their readiness dissolving into fatigue. At dawn, Ghori's fresh, highly mobile horse archers struck. They caught the defenders while they were still waking, disorganized and physically unprepared for a charge. The Rajput defense fractured. The victory at Tarain was secured not by the weight of Ghori's army, but by his willingness to wait for the exact moment his opponent stopped expecting a fight. In the centuries following the war, Prithviraj Chauhan popularized a tale of a captured, blinded Chauhan assassinating Ghori with a sound-guided arrow. This account belongs to the tradition of courtly literature rather than the historical record. The archaeological evidence Ghori left behind reveals a ruler focused on administrative and economic stability rather than dramatic vengeance. Ghori issued this currency for his new subjects. One side features the Hindu goddess Lakshmi. He even had his name inscribed in Sanskrit. By adopting local symbols, he sought to legitimize his rule through the existing economic system. This calculated cultural hybridity helped prevent an immediate mass rebellion, allowing the new administration to take root in a population that had never lived under Central Asian rule. While Ghori focused on the politics of Delhi, the expansion remained violent at the edges. His general, Bakhtiar Khilji, pushed east into Bihar, where his forces burned the ancient Nalanda University, destroying one of the world's greatest centers of knowledge. Ghori eventually returned to his capital in Ghazni, but he left his general Qutb-ud-Din Aibak to govern in his stead. This set the permanent foundation for what would become the Delhi Sultanate. The Sultanate was built on the remains of failed campaigns. By adapting to the subcontinent's geography and politics, Ghori's forces established a permanent new seat of power in Delhi.